Hey folks, this is MK from I Am Energy. So I wanted to talk to you folks about one of the oldest Mandela effects that I ever had, and this is way before, I guess, all the hype started, uh, for the most part, about Mandela effect, or Mandela effects. Um, I guess, as far as I recall, a few weeks back when I checked, people didn't necessarily, may have not necessarily called it Mandela effects back then. Um, I would just plainly also call it, or literally call it, a time shift, or being jumping parallel dimensions, so to speak. And I guess with all the awakening process that we are going through, and I'm going through myself, uh, the awakening process, I don't believe only helps you remember or realize your potentials as and uh, as a being. I won't get into all the details about being an infinite being or as such, but let's just say as a being. Um, but it also, I believe, helps you remember some of the distant memories in your current life that you may have forgotten from your childhood and so on. So this is something, I'm not sure what I was looking at in the news or talking about in the news. Um, but this is something uh, that I realized or recollected all of a sudden earlier today. And I believe it happened sometime between the early 90s and the mid 90s. Um, the reason I say that is in the mid 90s for a few years, or starting in the mid 90s for a few years, uh, um, I think around end of 96 or so, uh, my dad lost his job, and we were living in South Asia, and we came to the States. We were permanent residents back then. Uh, we haven't yet become U.S. citizens. We were what they call resident alien. That's what used to be called, other than permanent residents, uh, or green card holders. Let's just put it that way. So we decided to come here, stay for a few months, and then um, my because my dad lost his job, we decided to come here and see what potentials might be out there. So we stayed here for about 5-6 months and then head back because my grandmother got sick, and after he came back a few months later, or actually about a month, within a month or so, she passed away. It wasn't a very sad thing. Yes, the fact that she passed away was sad for all of us. I don't quite recollect my emotions that much. I just remember not feeling that sad at that time. I guess because I was a child in my early teens. But she was lucky enough to see all her children uh, before she passed away. So we all enjoyed a day or two before she passed away with her. So I guess it was kind of a good thing at the same time as well. But at any rate, so we stayed at my grandparents' house. None of my grandparents were living at that time. By that time, I guess. So it was either that time for a few months before my dad started a new business. We got a new house. We moved into our new house, or it was early '90s. We may have stayed at my grandparents' house for some time back then. When my dad transitioned into a new job, I'm not quite sure the exact time that that it happened, but I just remember it was sometime between the early '90s and the mid '90s, and it happened multiple times. That's what I really clearly remember. There's no way this could have been a dream, because the event happened. This is not, don't confuse it with the event that everyone's been talking about. And although I'm probably going to be doing a little video about it later on as well, I found some details about some interesting things today in the news that may or may not have to do with it. But this incident, let's just put it that way, of Mandela effect or time shift or parallel dimensions occurred while I was awake. And I remember I would then doze off and then wake up and see something totally different. So let's get into the details. So basically, my I believe my dad got a black and white Sanyo television. It was one of those classic type of TVs with sliding doors. My dad got it for my grandparents, I believe, quite some time back. I may have been in the 80s or the 70s. It might sound weird, but in South Asia, at least in my native country where I was born and raised part of my life, televisions were still black and white until I believe mid 70s or late 70s. I might be wrong exactly, but it was quite some years before we actually got color TVs or color pictures or cinemas produced over there. So it was a Sanyo TV. I believe it might not be working now, but we still have it in our house back in Bangladesh, where my parents are still living. They occasionally visit. They're visiting here every now and then, every year, or at least every couple of years. So I remember watching, I think, Mickey Mouse, cartoons, and some other videos. Back then, it might not have been Mickey Mouse. I just remember seeing some cartoons and some videos playing in that TV. I've been looking at the TV, and slowly the colors would change from black to color. Um, and it's not that I will always doze off. Sometimes I will doze off and then wake up and see it's all black and white again. And at other times, I'll be just looking at it and the colors would change while I'm awake. And I know it sounds weird sometimes. I told some of my uncles and relatives who were living in my grandparents' house at that time, and I told my dad that I was watching color on the TV. No one would believe me, obviously. Uh, they thought it was just illusions, or I was delusional, or I was a kid, I was making stuff up or imagining things like quote unquote most kids imagine. Um, but I clearly remember watching color pictures on a black and white TV. I don't remember the model of this I knew, but I guess I described you guys how it looked like. It kind of looked like a decorational table on top. I mean, you could put stuff on top of the TV. It basically looked like a coffee table, but underneath, in the middle, it was the black and white uh, tube TVs. You know, and back in the days before, way before these LED or LCD TVs came out. I guess a lot of kids nowadays might not even know what a tube TV is, even though it's only been maybe, 15 or 20 years since the LCD TVs started off in the commercial sector, or, became more easy to buy by the public. But it had the tube TV in the middle, and then it had two speakers, or two sets of speakers on each side. And like I said, it had a sliding door. You would just open it up and close it off, just to keep it away from dust, I guess. It was very weird. What people, I guess, tends to forget that when we are kids, all of us, even those who are elders, when they were kids as well, because of the flexible mind, I'm using the word flexible for lack of better words, because of our flexible mind, we are able to see and do things that are normally become which normally become a little tough for us to do when we start getting older, because maybe not our heart but our mind start focusing excuse me, into on certain things, so that I guess we can stay focused on one way or another. That's how the brain, I guess, works. Unless we go through this awakening process, which all of us are going through right now, I guess. Because I also remember, not necessarily mid-90s, but when we moved finally out of my grandparents' house, after my grandmother died, my granddad, from my, both of them I'm talking about are from my dad's side, but my granddad passed away long before then, in the late 80s, I believe, or mid 80s. After my grandmother passed away, my paternal grandmother, that is, and we moved to our new house. A few years later, I remember uh, me and my younger brother, who also passed away. I know it sounds saddening in a way, but it's something that have happened a long time ago. God bless his soul, the high power, bless his soul. He passed away from brain cancer roughly about 15 years ago. Today or a couple of days back, April the 2nd was his 15th year anniversary since he passed away. Back in '03, he was diagnosed with brainstem glioma. It's a very sensitive form of brain cancer. It was malignant uh, that he got diagnosed with, I believe, back in 2000 or early 2001. But he survived roughly about a couple of years, a little over a couple of years. But I remember when we were young, uh, in the late 90s, I guess, um, very clearly remember this, and I've spoken about it because I've told my friends and relatives about it as well. We used to play telekinesis. I don't remember if we watched some kind of a TV show or a movie. All I remember we used to play. We would, my dad had hired these contractors, for lack of better words, or I guess furniture architects, um, or masons. Not like Freemasons, but masons as in doing masonry, or work with woods and stuff. I'm not sure if I'm using the right words. So let's just say furniture architects and builders. And he had got these couple custom made study tables for us with, now that I think of it, it was really cool. They were pretty heavy with desk drawers. We could put a computer on one of them. Later on, at least, we didn't have a computer back then. We got our first computer, I think, back in 98 or 2000. Yeah, it was that late since we ever got our own personal computer. Not that other people didn't have it, or my dad couldn't afford it. He just didn't feel, or even we didn't feel the necessity to have a computer that early in our house. We used it in our school. I was taking classes as well in my school on programming, and starting in mid 90s in 1995. Basic and quick basic. Aside from that, let's just put those things aside. So I remember on that one of those desks, or both of them, my brother and I, we would have fun practicing and competing with each other, doing telekinesis. Sounds weird, and it would sound even weird when I tell you this, but we literally used to move a glass, like a glass for water, a small glass of water, like a half glass of water. We literally used to move an empty glass with our minds just by looking at it. First few times it didn't work. We would leave it on top of the table, kept on looking at it until it moved, and we would compete on who would be able to move it faster, or even, I guess, further than each other, on top of the study table. They were basically racks to put books, or our tools for study, pencils and whatnot, but we'd leave the glass right there and we'll keep on looking at it until it would move, and it would move. And Um, I'm not sure exactly how we were able to do it, just by trying a little. Um, but it happened. And then I'm not sure if my brother gave up doing it, thinking it might have been scary, thinking that it might have been jinns, like not listed the genie, but jinns. Um, uh, Good jinns, I guess, since they weren't necessarily trying to harm us, if there was any. And so he got a little scared about it, or even about the whole thing that, the glass was moving. He might have been, or he probably just stopped doing it. After a while, I tried it on my own a few times, and then I was a child. There wasn't necessarily anyone to support me with these abilities. I kind of got scared myself as well, thinking that, you know, what if it's not me? What if someone else or some other being is moving it and just playing with me? So I stopped. But it was something that we were able to do. I still remember, and even to this day, if I focus, I'm able to hear things sometimes way before others can. I'm not saying in terms of time travel, it's just that in terms of distance, something might already be playing somewhere, like a music track or something, and I'll be telling my family or my friends, excuse me, whoever's around me, do you guys listen to that? Are you guys listening to this? And they would say, what are you talking about? I'm saying, you know, I'm hearing this music playing somewhere. And even to this day, a lot of people wouldn't believe me until a few minutes later they would hear it. Um, so I still have that ability. It was much more uh, pronounced, for lack of better words, or uh, much more easier for me to do it before than now. Um, um, Even to this day, I remember. I don't know if any of you have used these mosquito repellent apps where it has a very low frequency. So it works uh, whenever I'm in an area, where there are mosquitoes around or bugs around, particularly mosquitoes. Um, it works to a certain extent. The only problem is I also start hearing that frequency, and it really annoys me. Um, it becomes really high pitched. It's very annoying to my ears sometimes. So I'm able to hear those low frequencies as well. I guess maybe a lot of people are able to do that as well. But so I had that capability of listening to things while my brother had a very good sight. We might be, I remember one time we visited uh, the Grand Central Station in New York. I don't remember how many years back, but it was sometime in the 90s, I guess, or early 2000. Actually, I think it was it was in sometime in the 90s. We were visiting New York, some of our relatives, and we were at the Grand Central Station, and he was able to look out for, I don't know if it was um, the gate number or something, a few gates down, that we couldn't even tell. he was also able to, this was one of his favorite hobbies to do, is look for planes in the air and be able to tell what, not only what type of plane, but specifically what airliner is going above in the sky. And pretty high up, he would be able to say if it was a British Airways or an Emirates, or whatever, you know. We weren't able to do that. Even to this day, you know, I mean, I'm able to notice planes like I told you guys in a couple of my previous videos when they're flying high up in the air, but not necessarily I'm able to tell, at least not all the time, maybe sometimes, but not all the time I'm able to say what airliner it is, unless they're flying in on a low orbit. So my mother told me that it may have to do with my lineage from my mother's side. Most of the family members in my mother's side were into Sufism and spiritualism and mysticism. So maybe we got it from there. But I told my mother a few weeks back, every now and then I still tell her, you know, I'm able to have visions or have clairvoyance to a certain extent nowadays. Sometimes I'm able to see it in my dreams. My wife is able to see a lot of things in her dreams, and they do become real, unless we do something about it. And it happened quite a few times. But I'm able to do it as well. I've done it a few times in the past, and there were incidents where me, my mother, and a lot of people in our family would see the same exact dream about something happening in the future. Let's say like a flood in South Asia, not necessarily a really great flood, but you know, they have a season for flood in South Asia, particularly in Bangladesh and India. So we would be able to tell when we would every now and then have dreams like that, or if there is some kind of a storm coming up and whatnot. So it was very interesting. But I told my mother about that. I'm starting to experience these more and more right now, and my mother said that may have to do with that. Maybe it is, you know. Maybe it has to do with it. I've heard I believe it because I've experienced beings in the past. I'll get into more details about those later on, but my mother said that they were followers. I'm not talking about demons, I'm talking about beings. Let's just not say jinns or fairies or whatnot, let's just say beings that used to be followers. I don't know, that's kind of the word that comes to my mind in English. They weren't worshiping my granddad, my maternal granddad, or my great granddad, and so on. You can look up the word in Bengali. The word is called murid, Muridh. I think that's how it's spelled. So basically, out of respect, they would follow him, not necessarily as a prophet, but just as a pious being and a mystic person or Sufi and whatnot. So there have been stories about that in the past. I remember, and a lot of people, when you start having these experiences to yourself, you start believing more and more. If you haven't had any of these experiences in the past, similar experiences, even to a certain form, a lot of people won't believe these things. My mother told me about one story once where they were in a village taking some shelter from a storm of some kind, I believe. And my granddad grabbed uh, some sand from the ground, said something into it, and threw it in the sky. Right after that, all the clouds started disappearing. The storm went away. So I wouldn't say it was magic, but even to this day, through all the awakening process, and a lot of people have said, there is power in our spoken word as well. If we really say something and we really mean it, not just with our minds, even if we speak and we really mean it from our heart, things do happen. One of the persons who commented in one of my previous videos said some really great advice, and I've been taking that. I've been trying to follow it almost every day now. And thank you for that comment. Is telling yourself that you're already healed or you're healed. So every morning now, when I wake up and even before I go to sleep, I try to follow this saying that I'm healed or I'm already healed. And it does help. If you keep on saying that, over and over again, your mind, your body, your heart starts believing that and starts to follow that in terms of all the cells in your body and whatnot to keep you healed all the time. So things are possible. So I know I probably got a little sidetracked. I did say I'll be sharing some of my personal experiences. I'll be probably obviously sharing a lot more in the future as well. Like the part where I said that I had my own experiences with certain beings recently and in the past as well. But that's that for now. Just wanted to share with you some of the stories and see what you have to say. If any of you had some similar experiences, please feel free to share your comments about it, like that time shift or Mandela effect from the early 90s that I talked about, or even any of these telekinesis or any kind of experiences that you may have had earlier in your life. Just don't try to force yourself, but just try to relax and try to recollect. I'm sure all of us had some of these instances in the past. My wife was surprised, and my parents were also surprised that I was able to remember things since I was 4 or 5 years old. So because I did, I keep on telling my wife that our son is about 5 years old now. He's going to be 6 pretty soon in the next month he's going to be 6 years old. And I told her, since I've been able to remember things, there's a possibility that he's probably going to be able to remember his experiences now. He already understands a lot of things. It's pretty emotional. He I guess already understands a lot of things. Let's just put it to that. And so I told her, just when you're nurturing and caring him and trying to talk to him about his mistakes, or whenever he's a little too playful, so to speak. Be very gentle and careful about how you approach him. And we both need to be, as husband and wife, need to be behaving in certain ways, obviously, in front of our kids, and as every parent should be. Because they do remember. We all remember from our childhood. And we start reflecting some of those experiences in our lives as well. So, share your comments. I'm going to leave it to that for now. Like I said, I will be, if not today, maybe tomorrow, talk about the event and something I found out about earlier today on news. I'll probably try to get more details about. Sorry about that. I got disconnected. I'm not sure what just happened. I was trying to record the video using the YouTube video upload app. So like I said, I'll be posting another video about the event that a lot of people have been talking about, and I found something, and I found out about something earlier today. Today is the 3rd of April, just in case I don't get to post this video tonight. Something about researchers and scientists noticed 72 flashes. Yep, 72 flashes. They call it unusual flashes from somewhere. I'm not sure about the exact details. I'll get the details about it later on. But there were, at least since the time I read about this earlier, this afternoon, earlier afternoon today, they were still unable to decide or determine what caused these flashes to occur. Maybe it has something to do with the event, maybe not. We'll see. Things have been happening pretty interesting. So we'll see. I'll talk about it in the next video. Be sure to check out all the previous videos I've posted, even the one that I posted, I believe yesterday or last night, about boom noises that I heard yesterday when we had quite a few severe thunderstorms occurring in Nashville. So share comments on all those videos. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notification bell. And let me know what other topics you might want me to talk about and discuss about, or any questions or concerns that you may have, or particularly questions that you may have about any of my videos or experiences, or anything any experience that you may have had already and you want to talk about it. Feel free to share them with me. You can also email me. I guess the only reason I'm able to receive emails to check them right now because this channel is fairly new. So feel free to take advantage of that. You can email me at it should be in my about section, but just in case it's not, I'll put it in this video. I believe it's goodnessforallbeings at gmail.com, but I'll post it in the description for this video. That's it for now. This is MK. Until next time. And we're all energies. Take care.